All right, so you're either checking your work, hopefully, not just coming here to get the answers. This stuff is pretty simple, but we already have the notes. If you need to learn a little bit better what all this stuff is, I would suggest watching the notes version of this first of all, and then you can try the problems and then watch them. Now, remember, even though this is the first day and this is up on the first day, we're only going to go over the 4 that I have the dots by, okay? And we're not going to go through the whole thing. We'll do it a piece at a time, okay? So yes, you will have to watch multiple videos to get these all, and maybe that's just my way of boosting my views and, you know, trying to become a YouTuber. Not really, but you can pretend like it is. All right, so first thing, remember, Y-intercepts, where it crosses the Y-axis. So I look on the Y-axis, there it crosses right there, and I write the point, which is 0, 7. Remember, Y-intercepts always have 0 first. Now, X-intercepts, where it crosses the X-axis. So right there at 3, 0. So we write 3, 0. Make sure that Y-intercept always is 0, then the number. X-intercept is always the number, then 0. Don't mix them up. If you mix them up, you will get them wrong. Okay, maximum, what's our highest point? This one happens also to be our Y-intercept, so it'd be 0, 7. Minimum, what's our lowest point? Looking at here, right there at 5, negative 5. So at 5, negative 5, we have our minimum. Okay, so moving on to the next group. Okay, so Y-intercept, remember we only ever have one Y-intercept, so we can see it right here on the Y-axis, so it's 0, negative 1. But with our X-axis, we can have more than one. As we see here, we've got 2 right here. So 1, 0, and it looks like negative 5, 0. So 1, 0, and negative 5, 0. Okay. For our maximum, where's our highest point? Notice these aren't arrows, they're dots. So highest point is right there, which is 6 and 5 is the coordinate. Minimum, our lowest point right here, would be negative 2, negative 3. Okay, so we're done with that front page. All right, now looking at the next one. Okay, now this one's kind of a different. It's more curved, right? And if we look at that, you may think that it keeps going, but there's no arrow to indicate it, so it's going to stop right there and right there. Okay. However, let's just pretend it did. Let's say this kept going up. Okay. If it did, then we wouldn't have a maximum. Now, we could have a relative maximum right here. Okay. And that's the interesting thing here on this graph is we actually do have 2 maximums, don't we? Kind of getting ahead of myself. Because they're both the same height, we'll call them our maximums. Okay. So one would be 0 and 2. And the other one would be, looks like that's a 1.5 and a 2. Okay, make sure you pay attention to that scale. Don't just count boxes and think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, because you've got to look at those scales. And I was meaning to erase that. All right, so we already did maximum. So if we look at our minimums, we see it's got the same situation going, doesn't it? So at 1, negative 2, it's got a minimum, and also at negative 0.5, negative 2. Notice that their y values are the same, okay? But remember, with functions, x values can go to the same y value just as long as the same x value doesn't go to different y values, okay? Now we look for our x-intercepts and y-intercepts. So y-intercept, pretty easy to see. It's that maximum, so that's 0, 2. X-intercepts, it looks like we've got 3, okay? And they're kind of hard to tell what they're at, aren't they? So this one in the middle looks like it's 0.50. Okay. Now this other one, okay, so we're going 0.5, so each one of these is about 0.1. So that'd be 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. So maybe guess in between that. So 1.350. Okay, something close to that would be fine. And then our last one, we go about negative 0.1, 2, 3, we'll say maybe negative 0.350. Okay, so if we have to estimate a little on some of these, that's all right too. All right, okay, there we go with that one. All right, now we got one that's got some curved aspect to it and also some straight lines to it, which is fine. Okay, so we look for our y-intercept. We can see that's where it's starting, a true starting number in this case, right? So it'd be 0, 10. Now we should look at our x-axis and realize it's never going to cross our x-axis, so we call that none. Okay, now our minimum, lowest point it goes is right here, which is about 1, 2, 3, 1. So 3, 1 for our minimum, and our maximum, pretty easy to see it's up there at 10 and 11. So 10, 11. All right, so there's all our maximums and minimums and x and y-intercepts for our graphs. Now we look at our table. So remember, for our y-intercept, we look here for 0. Okay, there's our y-intercept at 0, 2. For our x-intercept, we look down here at 0, right? We see it right there at negative 1, 0. Once again, keep those zeros in the right spot. Now for the maximums and the minimums, we're only looking at the y values here. So what's our highest and our lowest point? Lowest, pretty easy to see, negative 5. So negative 2, negative 5 for a minimum. Highest is positive 5, so 2, 5. So 2, 5 for our max, and for our min, negative 2, negative 5. So maybe you think graphs are easier, maybe you think tables are easier, but hopefully you see how we're getting each one. Okay, so if we go with our minimum, what's our lowest point? Looks like it's right there, which is a 0 in the y, so that minimum of 2, 0 is also our x-intercept. Okay, then we find the maximum, highest point is 20, so at negative 620 is our maximum. Then the last one, our y-intercept, find where the x is 0, and that gives us our y-intercept at 0, 5. All right, so number 11, y-intercept, we find our 0, so 0, 25 is our y-intercept. Our x-intercept, we find our 0 here, so 2, 0, no other x-intercepts. Our maximum, we look here, what's our highest point? Pretty easy to see, it's 100, so negative 3, 100. And our lowest, our minimum, is 0, 2. Okay, and remember, if you really wanted to, you could take your table and you could graph it and have that visual. Okay, though sometimes it might be hard to do, like on number 12. Okay, but we can see it starts low and then just keeps getting higher and higher. So maximum is where we end at 6, 7, 29, and the minimum is where we start at 0, 0. Now 0, 0, 0 on the right, 0 on the left, that's our origin. It is also our y and our x intercepts. All right, so there we go, guys. That's all we need to do with that. Once again, make sure you don't mix up these zeros. Okay, if this is 25, 0, that's wrong. That's an x-intercept. If this is 0, 2, that's wrong. It's a y-intercept. Okay, you've got to make sure that you're lining those up, getting those correct. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. And like I said, if you wanted to take this and graph it, okay, plot all these points. By all means, go for it. You know, and see what it looks like. And see maximum, minimum, x and y intercepts. Okay? Alright guys, there we go. There is the first day of doing this. Now, don't throw this away. Don't turn it in yet. You've still got domain, range, increasing, decreasing, positive, negative, and rate of change. And also, I didn't write it on here, but we'll get end behavior in too. Okay? So, there we go.